Okay, I mistimed that. This is going to be a little weird. Where I was finishing up is to say the secondary function of this is to be sized such that it acts as a guiding means. This is the last bushing that holds the heel of this bullet in alignment as it enters the lance, as it enters the bore, as it engraves itself into the bore. Now, the pressures on the back are obturating the bullet, which means that they're swelling it a little bit. But in any case, there's always enough clearance in here. These pop out and they give what's called bullet release. They release the bullet. I contend that with VLD bullets and long-range bullets, you can run this clear down to slip fit and there is no deleterious effect. Now, I respect empirical evidence. Therefore, when somebody who shall not be named coins the term turn thin to win, what he's saying is turn thinner necks to widen this and get 3 or 4 thousandths of clearance around that bullet, which allows the tail to wag 3 or 4 thousandths. Now, note that turn thin to win is a term that applies only to bench rest bullets, the tail of which are shaped like this. They have something called a pressure ring around the base. I contend that when that hammer hits this, it starts to obturate because it already has a forming pressure ring here. It has a tendency to hammer initially, and this might even expand just a little bit. So turning thin to win might allow for a little bit of expansion because there's a whole school of thought in the short-range PPC bench rest world that states that a little more net clearance will make you ag better. And I will not. These are winning people. I don't argue ever with empirical facts. I go in search of why are these facts relevant. I will say that in my experience and the experience of some people that I know who have built their own bullets, I have a guy that I used to know who wanted to go shoot at a place called Wimbledon, and they had 600, I think they were mostly 1,000, and he was shooting a 243, a 6mm bullet. He went out and had a set of dies built to make a typical long-range bullet. And he spec'd his own bearing surface, and he spec'd his own diameter, and he spec'd his own jacket length, and he spec'd this whole thing out with a pretty good sized boat tail on it. And he spec'd out a reamer, and he made a chamber that was absolutely, I mean, the brass cases were zero tolerance. It was something he coined a term at that point. I asked him, how much next clearance do you run? And he said, scuff fit. You run a case into the gun, a loaded case into the gun, pull it back out, and it's got scuffs on the neck. His answer was 0 clearance. Because I had been doing that for about 5-6 years prior to me meeting this guy and talking to him. And I just said thank you, and I didn't tell him anything about my experiences. I'm just some dummy that's shooting in his backyard. But ever since then, I still play with net clearances on a flat-based bullet, a bench rest bullet. I've never found tightness to have any adverse effects, but maybe I don't shoot that well. I don't know that. So I can get these to shoot with 0 net clearance, 1, 2, 3 thousandths on a bench rest style. I call them soup cans because they have an extremely long parallel bearing surface, and then some kind of a 2, 3, 4, 5, more like 6, 8 ogive. Some of them now are running 9 and 10 ogive. Some of them are tangent, some of them are whatever. But could you give me about 30 seconds here while I finish this? Or you can hang, but I can't help you with anything. I'm in the middle of a recording. So the point is, I think the turn thin to win thing has to do primarily with flat-based bullets. In my experimentations with long VLD style bullets, I find that going all the way down to a slip fit changes nothing. And I shoot everything over the chronograph, and I shoot for ES, so when I can shoot thousands of these bullets at scuff fit and keep my extreme spread down in 10, 12 feet per second, I think I've accomplished all the goals that all of this stuff tries to accomplish. All my life people have been turning necks to different thicknesses and been reaming flash holes, and they've been reaming primer pockets, and they've been going through all these histrionicas, weighing their brass, bell curving, checking water, on and on and on and on in an attempt to get their extreme spread down low. When you get down to it, that's the only reason they're doing it. Now, if empirically a loose fit gun shoots just as well as a tight fit gun, and you've got good extreme spread, nobody really gives a rat. That's fine. But in my case, that's not what I have found. Bench rest bullets aside, by that I mean short range bench rest bullets. I'm no expert on them. I can shoot bug holes when conditions are right. I feel good when I do it. But this VLD stuff is what I deal with. And because these traditionally have a shorter bearing surface, the bullets are longer, the ogives are longer. I drew this bullet with a very short, this ogive should actually go clear out like this to be somewhat accurate. That's a long lever moment, and when this bullet, because of excess clearance here, if this bullet jacks over, which it will always jack over whatever the neck allows. This is a physical fact that cannot be changed. This bullet does not somehow magically float in the middle and go woo woo woo. No, this is something called in-bore yaw. I've touched on it before. Now I drew the in-bore yaw. It's pretty obvious that this bullet tip is rotating, it's wobbling. Good, but it doesn't change the BC. That's not even the point. But it is a wobble that shouldn't be there. In-bore yaw results in more lateral jump. It results in more outside bore yaw. It results in a longer time for the yaw to settle out of the bullet, if it ever does. Now, this is technically what's called going to sleep, and there's a whole body of people out there that will tell you that going to sleep makes the gun shoot tighter with distance. Well, I'm just tired of that. I'm just calling absolute flat bullshit on that, to the point that I actually have a rack and 2 Iller 43s and an indoor shooting environment, and I will offer $1,000 and a Roos Chris meal and buy your airfare to fly out here and shoot over my chronograph, electronic bullet printer, and onto paper, and show me convergence in a group. I'm willing to spend $1,500 to be proven wrong. But let me just tell you the flip side. This is how bets work. You step up, I'll pay your way till you get here, but you've got to show me 3 groups out of 5 that are smaller with distance. There's rules to bets, people. And you know what? I've had a lot of big talkers step up and swing on the inner tube, and when I go, hey, $1,500 says you can't do it. I have the means here. I have acoustic targets lined up. I have a range. Come here, I'll buy your way here. All you have to do is drive to the airport and fly here. And then show me. And you'll prove me wrong right there in front of God and everybody across the inner tube. But nobody will do it. So, yaw is real. In-bore yaw is real. Settling yaw out is real. But trust me, when that yaw settles out, that bullet's on a path. It's going this way, it's going this way, it's not somehow curving back towards center. It's not like as the yaw comes out, the bullets come together. That, my friend, is bullshit. But that goes back to this whole idea. The reason I'm designing this cartridge case as a no-turn neck is because if I build the gun around the neck of the cartridge case, I can achieve the same effects. And the winningest man on the planet right now, whether he agrees with me or not, he doesn't know me, so it doesn't matter, obviously is finding that same thing out, because he's winning everywhere, and people are like, oh, how'd Bart do that? What the? And they throw out these BS ideas about, well, maybe you just got lucky. Well, no. Because when you got a piece of crap gun that needs a turn neck, you turn the neck to fit the gun. When you got a gun that's built to be thousandths of clearance on a factory neck, or 2,000ths or 3,000ths or whatever you want, there's got to be safety factors built in, lots of brass vary, Diameters vary. This is a constant fight, so I get a bunch of them, and I iron them a bunch of ways, and I buy other brands, and I don't have, see, the problem with this 30 Norma is all I have is current cases. We've got a situation right now in the PPC world where all of a sudden the company that makes the 220 Russian brass for the PPC just arbitrarily decided to make their neck brass a thousandths bigger, which is 2 thousandths bigger side to side outside the bullet. People have just, right now, it's happening. The talk is up on some of the shooting forums. These guys have bought reamers, waited the wait, tated the time, made the guns, only to find out that their new cases won't even go in the friggin' gun. They built the thing to empirically test whether or not, because in the BR world, this all started with 262 necks back when they collected the Saco brass from a pile under the pile at the backside of a camel. It was bad stuff. It was a balloon case head. It was out of round. It was sloppy. And so the necks varied. So they came up with a number that was smaller than the smallest neck. And the designers of this magical cartridge came up with something called a 262 neck, .262. And you had to turn the cases to get them to go into the chamber. And guns were built that way for years and years and years, and it always worked. Now brass has changed. Designs have evolved. Now the go-to brass cases are Lapua. Even though people are shooting Norma, probably somebody still out there shooting Saco. I don't know. The point, there's even people out there making 6P brass with the freaking neck already formed on it, which is an abortion. It's just a crime in the face of humanity, but oh well. Let's just start with the fact that the origin of the fitted neck was to turn the neck down to be able to play with the sizing, play with the effect of inbore yaw by changing this clearance. Once you know that that bullet does not go down, that it can't, and once you know that it's fixed and guided up here, because you're normally seated into the lands, but in any case you hit the lands long before you leave the neck. So the last thing the back of this bullet sees is rubbing the brass on the neck. And it might be rubbing on that side, it might be rubbing on that side, it might be rubbing on the top side. You don't know where it's going to rub. So just know that whatever clearance is in there is in there. There's nothing you can do about it. It's gonna slam one side or the other. Now, when you look down on the top of that neck, you're gonna realize that a factory neck will a lot of times be a thick and a thin side. There might be a thousandth of difference here. But you know what? If there's a thousandths of clearance here, let's say this now is the rifle, there's the neck sitting inside of it, and it's a thou thicker on this side than that. Let's just walk through this with me, my people. Here we got this eccentric neck. It's a thousandth off, and we got about 2 thousandths of clearance. Now here's where I need you to think. You must think. If we turn our necks and we give it 1,000th on each side, which is 2 thousandths of clearance, it's either going to go that side 1,000th or it's going to go that side 1,000th. Now please build this in your mind with me. So now we take a similar situation, only this neck is 1,000th thicker on this side than this side. If you do the math, you find that's a 1/2,000th of clearance. What that means is that this perfectly fitted neck bullet, turned and everything, can go over at least 1,000th. On this one, it can go 1,000th one way, but it can't even, on the fat side, it's going to actually get a straighter guide. The very worst side of this neck, the thinnest side of this neck, the worst problem that you could ever have with this eccentric neck, the very worst, I'm saying this slowly because I need you to hear what I'm saying. If the bullet, by chance, the planets line up so that it sits against the thinnest, it's guided by the thin side of the crookedest it can get, it will only equal this turn neck scenario. It will only equal it. For the whole rest of the circumference, it's actually better. Listen to what I'm saying. An unturned neck gives better guidance than a turned neck. A turned neck gives consistency. Thou this way, thou this way, thou this way, thou this way, thou this way. Got it? An unturned neck is a thou this way, straight this way, half a thou this way, in all cases with the same clearance. The eccentric neck is better. The eccentric neck gives a higher percentage of straight guidance than the perfectly centered neck. I hope you'll draw pictures and figure this out. The simple fact is that not only can an unturned neck cartridge shoot as well as a turned neck, it must, by scientific analysis, an unturned neck must shoot better than a turned neck. Now this is going to cause people to just scream and rage and throw rocks at their TV. I don't care. I'm done with all that. I'm done with arguing on the internet. I'm done with arguing with people that will not, cannot think. I'm done arguing. Instead, freeze frame this video, listen to this video. The reason that an unturned neck not only can, but will shoot better than a turned neck if you build for it, is because it gives the bullet a better chance of entering the land straight. If it's against the thick side of this neck, it's going to enter the land's dead center nuts with no inbore yaw. So the result of an unturned neck is that your inbore yaw percentages go from 1,000th to 0. On a turned neck, they are 1,000th. 1,000th this way, or 1,000th this way, or 1,000th. It's all immaterial. You build the gun around the neck, as long as you got a thou of clearance, the bullet's going to be jacked off a thou. If you got 2 thou, it's going to be jacked off. Well, 2 thou results in a thou. You do the math yourself, but understand the math. A 4-year-old child can do the math. Anybody watching this can do the math. If you got a hole and you got something inside of it, and you got 1,000th of clearance around it, that means you can go 1,000th this way, 1,000th this way. So plus or minus a thou is 2 thou total. Take it from there. Go 3 thou total, there's that much more wobble. But if you go with an eccentric one, that means 0 wobble on this side and all the wobble this way, up to and including. So I'm trying to use this to explain why we're doing this. Cartridge is solving a bunch of problems. We got the shouldering apparatus right here, which ensures dead square, perfectly formed, not bananaed cases. That's number one. We're setting it to, as I said, I've only been able to fire about 5, or measure about 5 different cases. They're within a thou, so I'll probably go a couple thou bigger than that. And send this down the road and own the reamer for a no-turn neck. There's no conceivable reason to turn necks in this day and age. People do it because they're lemmings. People do it because they're too ignorant to figure out why necks are turned in the first place, and too unwilling to learn, or too self-conscious, don't have a good enough confidence, whatever it is. A lot of people talk themselves out of stuff because they're not confident that they can learn. Well, I'm a teacher. I'm not calling this a teaching channel. This is a sharing channel, because that's the current way for saying let's talk about this. But please, people, take these thought methods and apply them to, okay, what could possibly be the effect of an unturned neck? And you'll find that there's nothing negative. Now, by the same token, you take some big old fatty factory neck, and then you clean up your Winchester brass just to clean it up. All you've done is increase the clearance. That means the bullet jacks over 3 or 4 thousandths and goes down the bore like this. So cleaning up a neck just for the sake of cleaning up a neck is like deciding that after you've wiped your butt, you probably better polish that area behind your ears just to make it a little better. Well, why? They're not even related. It's stupid. And stupidthink is the bane of my existence. So, the only other thing is, in the process of this, is I also have to get a sizing. I have to order up a reamer, which is what we're measuring for. This is most of it. And then I have to get a sizing die. In my case, because I have a relationship with the guy that's going to build this die, I'm going to go ahead and have him build me a die off of my reamer. So I don't have to wait till I have... The common way is to fire a case until it's tight, then send it off to the die maker, and the die maker makes a die for it. Sometimes right, sometimes wrong. There's 5 guys out there that say, send me 3 fired cases, send me a loose one, send me a couple of tight ones, mark them, or just send me some tight cases, and they make you a die. And generally it kind of works. I go beyond that because I want it to work better than any die maker's numbers. I want to change these pitches and ensure that this is still basically rock tight up here, and I've got a little clearance in the back. My dies are built so that they don't click. There's a lot of reasons why I don't want it done like somebody else is going to do a die. Well, more and more are doing it. Neil Jones introduced me to the concept years ago of making the taper out of parallel with the chamber. He's the one that started me on it. I'll say me and Neil Jones. I don't disagree with anything Neil does. And his bushing dies that include the shoulder, at first I thought they were stupid. But now I see the efficacy. He's dealing with people who are stupid. So this captures the, let's just say, Neil Jones freaking genius. And I'm glad he exists. And so anyway, good die maker. And making things work. So I am going to do something not recommended. I'm going to call a die maker and say, okay, here's the reamer print. I'm putting it right here in writing that if this doesn't work, I will turn around, send you cases, and set one up your way. In the meantime, if you can hit these numbers, hopefully then we will be able to get a reamer and a resizing die at about the same time and be able to whip this thing together and go to town. The idea of buying a resizing die off of the reamer is not, again, something I recommend. Please, people, don't go out there and you call a resizing die maker and say, I'd like you to send the reamer, and he'll fight you on it. It's kind of like the fact that any of you who own property might have a well. When you call the well driller, he wants you to have the place witched. It takes the load off it. Too many people, well, the well subject is most well drillers are going to want it witched because that kind of shifts the blame. By the same token, most die manufacturers, they don't even know the reason, but most resizing die manufacturers miss a lot of times when they go off the reamer. It's because the guy driving the reamer doesn't know how to cut a chamber to the size of the reamer. Therefore the sizing effect goes sideways because it's a vanishingly small percentage of people on this planet, like 9 maybe, who can cut 2 identical chambers with the same reamer. People chamber and the reamer walks around and get a big oversized wallered out hole, so the die maker sends them a die and it doesn't fit. Well, I tell my die maker, my holes fit your die, therefore the sizing die will fit. My holes fit the reamer.